Amazon made one of the single greatest and most costly mistakes in modern entertainment history, as we covered in a recent video. To briefly summarize the main points of it, they had contracted Ryan Condal to make them a high-end Conan the Barbarian series, which would serve as the spiritual successor to Game of Thrones. But then there was a change in management at Amazon, which saw the Conan series scrapped over toxic masculinity concerns. This was when HBO swooped in and hired the newly unemployed Ryan Condal to produce House of the Dragon for them, which as it happened would go on to resoundingly beat Amazon's own Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power in every metric that matters. Do check out that full video if you haven't seen it, link is in the description. But the recurring question many had after that video was, what of Conan? It is widely known that Conan is being developed at Netflix now, but is it the same series Condal would have made, or a different one? We shall see, for in this video we will go through everything that is currently known about the Netflix Conan series. But since there is no Freude like Schadenfreude, we will begin with rubbing some more salt in Amazon's wounds by highlighting just how much they helped their competitor HBO. Then we'll go through what is currently known about the Netflix iteration of Conan, and finally address the big concern you all have. Will it be woke? Ryan Condal spoke of how Amazon scrapping his Conan series ended up influencing House of the Dragon in an August 19th interview with IGN. The piece says about Condal, his dream project was to craft an episodic high fantasy drama. Around 2016, Condal got the rights to Robert E. Howard's Conan the Barbarian in the hopes of shaping it into a high fantasy streaming series for Prime Video. That was me kind of going, well, I'll never do a Game of Thrones show, so what's the next best thing? Condal tells IGN about the winding creative path that led to House of the Dragon. There's a lot of Thrones DNA in Conan, because J.R.R. Martin was hugely influenced by Robert E. Howard, as was J.R.R. Tolkien. This, of course, is true. Several years before Tolkien wrote his fully realized fictional prehistory for the UK and northwestern Europe in his Middle-earth tales, Texan author Robert E. Howard had already written a fully realized, internally consistent fictional prehistory for the world in his Hyborian Age, the Age of Conan. While it can be debated just how much influence Tolkien took from it, he would certainly have been aware of Howard's Hyborian Age. But J.R.R. Martin was massively influenced by Howard's Conan stories, to the point where I would offer a slight correction to what Condal claimed. There is no Thrones DNA in Conan, as Conan came first. There is Conan DNA in Thrones. The article then describes how Condal was introduced to notable Game of Thrones director Miguel Sapochnik via their mutually shared agent who thought they would get along well. Sapochnik also loves Conan and had grown up on Arnold Schwarzenegger and that film and loved the comic books. While it is not stated here, thanks to our exclusive interview with Fredrik Malmberg, the keeper of the Conan legend, we know that Sapochnik was in line to direct the previous iteration of Conan before that, namely the Legend of Conan feature film, which would have seen Arnold Schwarzenegger's return to the role. But that was scrapped by Universal in the aftermath of Terminator Sega Genesis flopping in the summer of 2015. This, of course, is the real reason their shared agent brought them together. It wasn't just that he thought they would play nicely together, but here's Miguel, whose Conan movie just fell apart, and here's Ryan, who is setting up a Conan series at Amazon. Miguel obviously knows his Conan, so it only makes sense to get him in on the gig. And so it came to be that Miguel Sapochnik and Ryan Condal, the later writer and director of HBO's House of the Dragon, started their working relationship on Amazon's Conan. About that series, Condal said, "We wrote 3 scripts and a Bible for that show." And while he does not say it here, longtime viewers of Midnight's Edge will know that the pilot script was based on the Frost Giant's daughter, because we covered it at the time. But he continues. And then it was unceremoniously jettisoned over there when Lord of the Rings happened. There was a change in Amazon studio leadership, with all the things you dread as a writer, with them acquiring a massive, much bigger property that's in the same genre and with a new head of the studio. We knew we weren't long for the world. That, I believe, is Condell being a consummate professional and a bit of a politician, giving some information to explain why his Conan never happened, but withholding and distorting other information, thereby enabling Amazon and the new head of the studio, whom he carefully does not name, to save face. Because she, for it was in fact Jennifer Salke, we have no qualms about naming her, messed up really, really badly here. But Condell being vague about this only makes sense, as it tells possible future collaborators that if things were to go south, Ryan Condell won't backstab them. But according to everything we have heard from multiple of our sources, Amazon gaining the Lord of the Rings had very little to do with Conan being scrapped. Indeed, Amazon's Lord of the Rings was announced in November of 2017, while Condell's Conan series wasn't announced until several months after that, in the spring of 2018. If Amazon getting the Lord of the Rings had made that much of a difference, the Conan series would never have been announced at all. Indeed, we have previously reported that Amazon were always looking for two series, one for the family market, that was Lord of the Rings, and one for the adult market, which is where Conan would have coexisted. What did matter though was the change of management, which happened around the same time Conan was announced. Of course, it took Salke a little while to get a full overview of everything Amazon had in development, but by the time she got around to Conan, around late summer, early fall of that year, the plug was pulled pretty quickly, as no such toxic masculinity would be coming out on her watch. To replace Conan, she greenlit an even more female-centric version of The Wheel of Time, which was formally announced in October of that year. Relieved of their commitments to Amazon, Condell and Sapochnik then headed over to HBO and fixed Game of Thrones for them in the guise of House of the Dragon. Just let that sink in. After season 8, Game of Thrones was a mess, and HBO couldn't get anything off the ground. Amazon had the perfect Game of Thrones replacement in Conan, but scrapped it in favor of The Wheel of Time, which they in turn proceeded to utterly ruin. And then the Conan showrunners, which Amazon themselves fired, went to HBO, fixed Game of Thrones for them, and launched a direct competitor to Amazon with House of the Dragon, which proceeded to kick the Rings of Power's ass.
You got knocked the fuck out!
In retrospect, Amazon would have been better off staying out of Condell and Sapochnik's way and give them free reins to make Conan, but the path not taken. So, what came of Conan? Much of the information we're about to present comes from our exclusive interview with Fredrik Malmberg, the keeper of the Conan legend. I highly recommend you check it out in its entirety. It is linked to in the description. First of all, the Conan scripts that Condell and Sapochnik wrote for Amazon remain the property of Amazon, so development had to start over from scratch at Netflix. Malmberg also said that under the Netflix deal, they were contemplating both animated as well as live-action films to complement the main live-action Conan series, but that the showrunner would ultimately call the shots on that. And about that, yes, there is a showrunner, and development is in progress as we speak. But who that showrunner is has not yet been announced to the public. When the announcement is made, we'll be sure to cover it. Independently of that, a Solomon Kane series is also being internally developed by the rights holder, so if the Conan series is sufficiently successful, that could be next. But before we get to anything beyond Conan, there remains a major elephant in the room that needs addressing. If Netflix had begun developing Conan, say 5 years ago, which was when most of their current woker-than-wokerton output was being developed, then yeah, they probably would have wanted to subvert it one way or the other. But they weren't developing Conan 5 years ago, they're doing it today, right now as we speak, and today is a different matter. You see, today Netflix are in something of a pickle. They are no longer profiting the way they once did, and in the past year, they've laid off hundreds. And of those hundreds, a significant portion were activists, the very same ones who contributed towards giving Netflix their woke stigma. Today, Netflix needs to make money, i.e. bring in subscribers, and they have very clear data going back years now, which send a very clear message that woke entertainment doesn't bring in any new viewers or retain old ones. Just consider Cowboy Bebop. That didn't last long, nor did their most recent Resident Evil. Last year's Masters of the Universe Revelation started off strong, but fell off a cliff, and Netflix knows exactly why. Also consider Sandman. It may be little more than a question of time, but as of the making of this video, Netflix still have not ordered a second season, and judging from his tweets, Neil Gaiman appears to be nervous about it. The pendulum is shifting across Hollywood, and the success of Cobra Kai and Top Gun Maverick is sending clear signals. Earlier this year, it was even widely reported that the head of Netflix informed his staff that they would be releasing content some may find problematic or unsafe. If any employees had a problem with that, they should consider quitting and finding another job elsewhere. Does that mean Netflix are fully on board with everything a Conan series would have to be? That I do not know. What I do know, based on my earlier conversations with him, is that Fredrik Malmberg actively champions preserving Conan's integrity and legacy. Between that and the changes Netflix are doing, I'm fairly optimistic that since it's being developed today, under the shifting pendulum, we actually could get a real Conan series, even from Netflix. What do you think? Let me know in the comments.